Good day, ma'am. I am Marchial Maquiling Jr., Bachelor of Science and Environmental Science student 1A. And this time, we will be learning about conservation biology. So without further ado, let's start. So here are our learning objectives. At the end of the discussion, we will be able to define conservation biology and its history. Know the conservation biology's principles and objectives. Discuss sustainable development. Enumerate threats and strategies. Let's start by defining what is conservation biology. So according to Murphy and Carroll of 1997, defined as a response by the scientific community to the biodiversity crisis. It is a goal-oriented science that focuses on reversing and understanding the causes of the loss of biodiversity, or the different types of organisms within an ecosystem. In a word, it is the study and implementation of methods to protect biodiversity. So, in the simplest form of explanation of its definition, when we say conservation biology, mao ni siya ang study of the biology, the threats or its problems, and the implementation of methods, ways or strategies para maprotektahan ang atong biodiversity. What do we mean by biodiversity? It will be further discussed later on as we go on our discussion. Here we have a brief history of conservation biology. From the ancient time, environment is being modified by human actions of their own benefits. This has a long-term consequences from the environment and life living in it. This is trying to say na the condition or ang kahintang sa atong environment was destroyed by the acts of man for their own benefits. This resulted to destruction on the entire biodiversity. So let's move on. This time, let us discuss and know what are the concepts and principles of conservation biology. First is, humans are widely regarded as responsible for the extinction of a variety of large mammals. Let us define terms muna. When we say extinction, this means the complete disappearance or pagkagamay sa number of a species here on Earth. And this concept is trying to say na the extinction of variety of large mammals is the responsibility of the humans. The second concept and principle is, since wildlife belonged to the people, anyone could hunt, fish, or harvest, which lead to overexploitation of many game species. So as people is responsible of the environment, people are also the owner or the wildlife belong to the people maong pwede sila makahunt, makapangisda, harvest, which is sometimes could lead to overexploitation or the act of using too much of something. So there are two objectives of conservation biology. When we say objectives, these are something toward which effort is directed or simply ang goal ng conservation biology. First, or objective number 1, to investigate human impacts on global diversity. This phrase suggests a research focus on examining the effects of human activities on global biodiversity on the variety of life on Earth. The aim is to explore and understand how various actions and influences stemming from human activities contribute to changes in the diversity of species, ecosystems, and the overall ecological health at a global scale. Second objective is to develop practical approaches to promote human development without extinguishing biological diversity. This statement emphasizes the need to create effective strategies that support human development while simultaneously preserving and safeguarding biological diversity. The goal is to find practical and sustainable ways for human societies to progress and improve their well-being without causing the extinction or significant loss of plant and animal species, ecosystems, and overall biodiversity. Moving forward, there are three principles that Murphy and Carroll of 1997 introduced. Number one is evolutionary change is natural and desirable. Number two, the ecological world is dynamic and non-equilibrial. Non-equilibrial meaning unique siya o wala siya'y kaparehas. Number three, human presence must be incorporated into conservation planning since we are the major drivers of change. Meaning human presence is important especially sa planning as to ways of conservation since kita humans ang drivers or hinungdan sa tanang pagbag-o sa palibot. Next, we have the setting conservation outline. Biodiversity refers to the variety of life on Earth at all levels of organization. In other words, it refers to the richness and variety of life on Earth encompassing all levels of biological organization. It includes the diversity of species, genetic diversity within species, and the variety of ecosystems and habitats that support life. This concept emphasizes the interconnectedness and complexity of the living world. So there are three different types of diversity. The first is organismal diversity. This considers the number of species, genera, families, orders, phyla, and domains or kingdoms. The second is ecological diversity. This considers the numbers of populations, communities, habitats, ecosystems, and biomes. Lastly, genetic diversity, which considers the numbers of genes, chromosomes, individuals, and populations. So aside from those types of diversity, other way of measuring biodiversity is also through using species richness or the number of species in a given area. Area with high species richness and lots and endemic species are called biodiversity hotspots. Conservation biologists classify species according to their abundance and instinct. Endangered, threatened, common categories. Moving on, let's have sustainable development. This is the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. This aim is to find a balance between economic growth, social progress, and environmental stewardship. By adopting practices that are environmentally responsible, socially inclusive, and economically viable, societies can pursue development that meets present needs while ensuring a positive legacy for the generations to come. This time, we have the threats for or of conservation, which refers to any human activity or process that has caused the destruction, degradation, and or impairment of biodiversity and natural processes. This includes habitat loss of all living and non-living organisms. It also includes invasive species, which are organisms that are not indigenous or native to a particular area. Examples of which are extinct fish, fungus, or even bacteria. Other threats also include pollution and overexploitation, which has been tackled and mentioned a while ago. Now, how we can take a move to alleviate these threats? So, in order to solve such, we have these conservation strategies. First, we have population and species level. This strategy focuses on the preservation of specific animal or plant species, particularly those that are endangered or at risk of extinction. The second one is landscape and ecosystem levels. This strategy broadens the scope to entire landscapes or ecosystem, aiming to protect the diversity of species and ecological processes within a given area. It involves habitat conservation, sustainable and land management practices, and restoration efforts that consider the interconnected relationships between different species and their environments. Next, we have conservation groups. Conservation groups are organizations dedicated to the protection and preservation of biodiversity. These groups often engage in a variety of activities including advocacy, research, education, and on-the-ground conservation projects. These work collaboratively with governments, communities, and other stakeholders to address conservation challenges. Next, we have protected areas. Establishing protected areas involves setting aside specific regions where human activities are regulated to safeguard ecosystems, species, and their habitats. These areas may include national parks, wildlife reserves, and marine sanctuaries. Protected areas serve as refuge for biodiversity, allowing natural processes to occur with minimal human interference. Next, we have laws and treaties. Legal frameworks and international arrangements play a crucial role in conservation. Laws and treaties provide a basis for regulating activities that may harm biodiversity such as habitat destruction, overexploitation, or pollution. They establish standards for conservation practices and often involve cooperation between nations to address global environmental challenges. And that concludes my discussion. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you understood something from our discussion. Thank you so much for watching and listening.